Hello everybody, welcome to Take Pandit session. This is Dan. Today I'm going to give a quick start demo on AWS DMS service. What is DMS? DMS stands for Database Migration Service. AWS DMS is a cloud service to migrate RDBMS, data warehouses, NoSQL databases, and other types of data stores. In general, DMS is a service which we can use to transfer data from various sources, or we can migrate data from various different types of sources. What we're going to do in this demo, we're going to extract data from a PostgreSQL database into comma separated files and store them into S3 bucket. So our source is a PostgreSQL database and target is files in S3 bucket. So we're going to use the PostgreSQL database instance on RDS as a source database. And then we're going to create the S3 bucket to store the extracted data files. We're going to access the database from our local machine and create some test tables and data. And finally, we're going to set up the DMS services or create the DMS components to extract the data, and we'll do an execution at the end which will show us that the data is extracted and it is stored in CSV files. So the DMS components on a high level, we are going to create, there are 4 different components. So we are going to create source endpoint. So source endpoint in DMS is a component which actually specify which types of source and what is the source. So we are going to specify here the PostgreSQL details. So like the URL to access the database, the user ID, password, and the other details like which table we want to extract the data from, and many other details like schema details and many other details. So in a broader term, source endpoint is nothing but the source database here, and target endpoint is the S3 bucket, the S3 bucket name where the data would be stored. That's the target endpoint. Replication instance in DMS is a kind of service which is nothing but an EC2 instance you can think of, which actually executes which actually used to do all this extraction process. So data replication instance is nothing but kind of EC2 instance which is running continuously, and whenever we schedule the task to happen, this EC2 instance is actually extracting the data from the source and dropping the data or extracting the data into the S3 bucket. And at the end, we'll create the database migration task. So database migration task is actually the task that we are going to execute. So you can understand that this database migration task is going to use this replication instance to extract the data from the source endpoint and store the data into this target endpoint. And that's all we're going to do. We're not going to use SCD. You might have heard of schema conversion tool in DMS, which is very popular, but we're going to keep this demo as simple as possible. So we're not going to use SCD. Just to tell you that SCD or the schema conversion tool is used where we need to convert the schema of the source database or the source data structure or the source endpoint. So it is usually used when we have different types of source and target. So like if we want to extract data from an Oracle database to let's say a PostgreSQL or in Aurora, so they are 2 different types of databases. So there we may need to use schema conversion tool. Database DMS or database migration service actually extracts only data. It doesn't extract the schema. That's the reason if we have to convert that schema, we need to use this SCT or schema conversion tool. So that's all for the theory part. Let's jump onto the practical or the demo. This is the AWS console. Let's go to the RDS service to check our database. So the PostgreSQL database which we are going to use as our source is this database one. I just created it before. If you want to know how we can create a RDS database instance, PostgreSQL instance, you can refer to my previous video, which is set deployment of database on RDS. So I have this database already ready. It is available. That means we can access and use it. Database name is this. This is the endpoint, the URL, the port. All these things are already given here. If you want to go to the more configuration, you will get more details of the database. So I'm going to access this database. So this is a publicly accessible database. That's why I can access it from my local machine directly. So this is the database. I'm accessing it from dweaver. Let's open a SQL editor. Okay. So you can see that this database doesn't have any tables present here. So it's blank on public schema. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create two small tables and some data into those tables. So I have some scripts ready. So this is, I'm going to create one department table and with few records, 3-4 records. So it's done. Let's query select star from department. Execute, yeah, we can see the data. I'll also create few more data. So let's create another table called employee and few more records. I'm going to create more records in this. Just execute this. So this is done. So let's just select from employees. Select star from employees. And just see if you can see the data. Yes, so this is the data. This data is created. You can see around 1,000 records are created. Yeah, around 1,000 records are created. So now what we're going to do, we are going to access this database. So we're going to access this database. We are going to access these two tables and extract the data from these two tables in DMS. So we have created metadata. Sorry, we have created data into the source database. Now we have to create the target S3 bucket where you want to store the data. So let's go to S3 bucket. So here I have to create one bucket. So let's give a name, DMS demo DMS target bucket. Remember that when you're creating the bucket, you need to choose this region region very effectively, because the DMS components that we are going to create also resides in some region, and the bucket and the DMS component should be in the same region, otherwise you will get some error. So choose the region which is closer to your location. So I am choosing AP Southeast 2, which is closer to me, and then just creating this bucket. So I have created demo DMS target bucket. So bucket is done. Let's go to DMS. So now we have to create all the DMS components. We have to create the source endpoint, we have to create the target endpoint, we have to create the replication instance, and we have to create the replication task, those four things. So here you can see, if we click on the DMS dashboard, this is the dashboard. I have nothing as of now. In resource summary we have nothing. So resource summary, you can see these are the major three categories. We have replication instances, which is EC2 instances actually. We have the migration task. We have endpoints like source endpoints and target endpoints. So let's start with replication instance creation. So let's go to replication instances screen and then create a replication instance. So let's give a name, demo rep instance, and then this resource name ARN optional. Give a description, demo rep instance. Choose the instance class. I'm ticking this box to include the previous generation instances classes so that I can DMST2 micro. If I don't tick this, I won't get DMST2 micro on this list. Please remember, DMST2 micro is actually considered in free tier eligible box. So if you select DMST2 micro, then you are not going to get charged. Otherwise, if you select some other instance type, it will be charged. Engine time default, allocation 50 GB allocation, or the storage is free under free tier. So you can choose that. Choose your VPC ID, make it publicly accessible. I'm not going to change anything. All these things are good. Security group, let's check, select the default security group. Other stuff I don't want to change. Let's keep it default, all good. So I am clicking on creation. So this is creating the replication instance. It will take some time to create this replication instance. I'm pausing this video and then I'll come back when the replication instance is ready. Now the replication instance is created and it's available. So we can see that there is a public IP address assigned, private IP address assigned. No need to worry about all these things as of now. If we click on this rep instance, we have got lots of information of it. Okay, we can see logs, migration tasks that are associated with it. So that means we can have multiple migration tasks associated with a replication instance. We can use one replication instance for multiple migrations. Yeah, so let's go and create the endpoints. So first we'll create the source endpoint. So source endpoint, so when you click on the endpoints, we can see there are two options. We can select target endpoint or we can select source endpoints. We have to create both. So let's start with source endpoint. It's a select, it's an RDS database. So we're just going to select the database one. Endpoint identifier, these are optional, no need to select. Yeah, here it is coming access to endpoint database. So whether I will specify the how I want to specify the database details like user ID, password, URL, port number. So either I can create a secret in secret manager and provide the secret ID over here, or I can provide them as we usually provide the user ID password. So I'm going to choose this user ID password. So all these things are all good. Server name is correct, URL is correct from the RDS. Password, I'm going to put the password, and database name. So database name here is Postgres. So I'm going to tick Postgres. Endpoint specification, nothing as of now. No, just I have to test the endpoint so I can test it. So let's run the test. I have to select a replication instance when I am testing, because ultimately this task is going to use the replication instance to do all the activity, to extract the data, to connect to the source, to connect to the target and everything. So whenever we are testing an endpoint, we have to use, or we have to specify which replication instance we are going to use. As you have seen, the replication instance resides in a VPC. So based on what kind of which VPC it is deployed, the accessibility will matter, or accessibility will vary. So yeah, this endpoint testing is successful. And I will just click on the create endpoint, and then it's done. So the endpoint is one of the endpoints, which is source. So source type endpoint is created. Let's create a target endpoint. So we're going to create a target endpoint. I have to provide a target endpoint identifier. So let's provide demo DMS target. We have to provide what kind of target it is. So there you can see there are so many different types of targets. We can specify SQL Server, we can specify MariaDB, we can Redshift, DynamoDB, anything. Microsoft SQL Server is there, PostgreSQL, and many things. I'm going to choose S3. So when I choose S3, it will ask me for a service access role. So that means when DMS is going to execute and extract the data in S3, it needs a role to access the S3. So you have to create that role. So let's create that role. So we'll go to IAM, go to roles. We're going to create a role. So it will be a DMS service, DMS entity. Trusted entity would be DMS. We'll select DMS from the trusted entity. We'll click on next. On policy, we'll give S3 full access. So DMS needs to access S3. That's why I'm giving full access to S3. It's not necessary to give the full access to S3. In ideal scenarios in production, you should tailor the policy so that DMS will have access to the only to the S3 bucket that we have created, not to everything, and only those that provision to write data. Let's give them a name, demo DMS role, and let's create this role. This role is created. Let's go there, copy this role ARN. We'll copy this role ARN and paste this ARN over here. Then you need to find out the bucket name. I forget the bucket name. Let's copy paste the bucket name from S3, the bucket that we have just now created. So we are going to S3 stream. So this is the bucket that we have created. We'll just select the bucket. We'll copy the bucket and paste it here. If you want to structure your data into folders, like one folder for Postgres, one folder for Microsoft SQL, and like this way, you can specify a folder name over here. So I'm going to give a name for, as of now, demo Postgres extract. That's all. Then in the extra connection details, what we're going to do, we're going to put this string. What is this? I will tell you. So this is nothing but if you go from the beginning, we can see that it is saying the extra connection attributes are the attributes which we need to tell to the endpoint what is the structure the data should be and what kind of data should be present. So here we are saying add column name equals to 2. So that means make the column name available in the extracted data. Column completion type is none. Data format, the format of the data should be CSV. CSV delimitated is comma, so it's specified here. Then CSV row delimitated is new 9. That's also, that is what we need to specify. Then tags, no tags. Then endpoint, we are going to test the endpoint same way. We are going to test whether the endpoint is accessible or not. Same way we have to specify the replication instance, because ultimately the replication instance or the EC2 instance actually is going to access this S3 bucket. So it should be available it should be available. So that's the reason before creating the endpoints, I created the replication instance, because to test the endpoint connection, I need this replication instance. So in this case, replication instance is able to connect to the S3 bucket, so it is successful. Please remember, if your bucket uh, is in different region, you may get a failure. You may be wondering what has happened wrong. So always remember, the DMS endpoint region or the DMS components region has to be same with the bucket region, otherwise it will fail. So let's create the endpoint. So here we can see we have two endpoints. One is source, that is PostgreSQL, another is target, which is S3. So we have created replication instance, we have created two endpoints. Now the task, so we have to create the task. Let's go and create the database migration task. We have to give an identifier, so demo task. Optional replication instance, we have to select this is an optional description ARN, you can give something or leave it. Replication instance we have created, source endpoint database 1, target endpoint demo DMS target. So migration type, so it says what kind of migration you want to do, like you want to do an ongoing, which is like change data capture. So if there is any change on the source, it will also capture, or it is just an existing data you just migrated. And replicate data and changes only means it will only capture the changes, not the full data. So these three are like, first one is migrate existing data, which is just a full extraction of the data, existing data, and replicate ongoing changes. When you select this type, so what will happen when you first execute, it will extract a full data, and then it will keep on executing, and whenever a changes happen on the source, it will capture that also. And the third one is only replicate the data changes. So if you select this type and execute the task, what will happen, it will keep executing, but it will not extract the existing data. It will only take the data or extract the data if there is any changes. So I'm going to use migrate existing data because I want to extract the full data from the source, whatever it has. And then we have to select the task setting. I'm not going to change this one. This is as it is. You can play around this. Then in advanced task setting, no, nothing. It is as it is. I'm not going to change anything. You can enable the CloudWatch logs so that whenever data extracted, you can see more specific log details. Then in the selection rule, you have to add a selection. So you have to choose a schema. So it's a Postgres database, but we have to select what schema we want to extract the data from. So if we go back to our database, the schemas, we have created these two tables in public schema. So we have to extract the data from public schema. So let's type the schema name as public. So we're going to use public. Then table name, use the percentage character as a wildcard. So we want to extract every table from this schema. So I'm just using percentage. And action, to include or exclude. If you choose exclude, you can exclude something. If you choose include, you can include. So I'm not going to change it because I want to include everything. You can play around with these filters, and you can extract particular table or few set of tables, not everything, and all these things. Yeah. And yeah, that's all that you have to do. No need to change anything, no transformation rules. We're not doing any transformation. You can, if you want, you can choose a transformation rule here, but as of now I'm not doing any transformation rules, so I'm just making it as simple as possible. And then that's all. I'm going to create the task. So you can see the task is getting created, so it will take some time. So this task, if you see, we have created this task to use this replication instance and extract the data from the source endpoints. This is the source endpoint, and extract the data into this target endpoint, which is an S3 bucket. So let's go and see if it is created. It will take some time to create this replication task or the migration task. Yes. So the migration task is now ready. So that means it is ready to execute. Let's execute this migration task. So we can, so our source is this public schema. So we want to extract everything from this public schema that has actually department and employee tables. And we want to extract this data into this demo DMS target bucket. As of now, it is empty. So let's execute. So we have already, it is executing now. So when the task is created, it is executing for the first time and it is in starting phase. So it is executing. If you refresh, yeah, we can see that the bucket folder that we have specified, the folder is created, and inside this folder the files would be created. So inside this folder we have public. So public is the schema name. So it has created a folder with the name of the schema. Then it has created two folders with the table names. One is department and it has the department data, and one is employees. It has the employees data. So you can see the employees had more data actually. So that's why it is 52.6 kilobyte, and the department is less, which is 117 bytes. So what we can do, we can see if we can see the data. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to download this file. Let's say I will just download this file and I'm going to open it. So I'm going to open this file in a notepad or any text editor. So I'm going to open this in brackets. I have brackets. So if you see, this is the file. So load one file is here. So this is the file extracted. So that's how it is extracted. So we have the column names, department ID, department name, location, and the data. Same way the employee ID is also employee tables, employees data is also extracted. What we can do, we can do a query with the st-select. So this is actually very good effective way to query any CSV file data or any kind of structured data from S3. So if we just run query, it is just fetching the data from that file and showing it. So this is how the data is stored. So you can see the data is extracted and it is in CSV file format. So yeah, that's all. That's how our data can be extracted from source to target into an S3 bucket. And yeah, that's how it is done. So you can see the load is completed. So progress is 100%. It's full load, and yeah, all these details are there. You can schedule this using a lambda function, or you can schedule this with any scheduler, and yeah, execute this in every 1 hour or every day, whatever way you want to do it. That's how it is done. So that's all as of now. I hope you have enjoyed it. Just to let you know that DMS is very effective in case you want to extract data or the full data from the sources, from the source databases like typical RDBMS like Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, Postgres, or any kind of this kind of structured databases, and you want to extract the data into S3, just dump them. Or you want to execute a CDC or keep or just configure a CDC like change data capture, where the first extraction will happen and then going forward whatever changes happened, the changes will be captured and files will be generated. If you have seen, the file name is very standard. So every tables file is starting with load, LOAD, and 0001. .csv. If you have if you are going to use cdc or the change data capture, then the first file would be load, but the ongoing files and later on all the files, the change data capture files, will be starting with the date and timestamp. So that's how the files are maintained. So it will be like in the order of date and timestamp. So if you want to order them, the which file has the previous data and which file has the latest data, then probably you can order them using date, using their file names. Yeah, that's all I think as of now. I hope you have enjoyed. So thank you. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you like it. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. If you want more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel and motivate me to create more content. Thank you.